Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to church this morning. The Lord is good, is He not? This was supposed to be an informal meeting today, and it really took me by surprise when I saw how many people have turned up. But the Lord is good.
Praise the Lord.
I was wondering how I was going to do the microphones and everything, but the Lord brought Brother Leith here this morning. I also wondered how I was going to remember all the ways to put things in here during the service. But our minute man, Mr. Tayton, came this morning as well. So you see that the Lord is so good, isn't He?
Praise the Lord.
We just let Him, He blesses us, and He does all the work. This morning, we're going to have a look at the life of Lot. We all remember Lot? Very famous man, and we're going to see if there's any lessons that may help us as we battle our way through life's toils and temptations. I like the story of Lot. Lot is very close to my heart because I believe that I followed Lot a lot in my ways. As we'll see from the way Lot led, I made the same mistakes that Lot made. And like Lot, I believe I lost my family too. We're going to start off with Genesis chapter 11. So if you'd like to turn to Genesis chapter 11, verses 27 to 32. Genesis chapter 11, verses 27 to 32. Now these are the generations of Terah. Terah begat Abraham, Nahor, and Haran. And Haran begat Lot. And Haran died before his father Terah in the land of his nativity in Ur of the Chaldees. And Abraham and Nahor took themselves wives. The name of Abraham's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife Milcah, the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah, and the father of Ishkah. But Sarah was barren, she had no child. And Terah took Abram his son, and Lot, the son of Haran, his son's son, and Sarai his daughter-in-law, his son Abraham's wife, and they went forth with them from Ur of the Chaldees to go into the land of Canaan. And they came unto Haran and dwelt there. And the days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran. In Genesis chapter 12, verse 1, the very next verse, it says, Now the Lord had said unto Abram, Get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, unto a land that I will show thee. Abraham received a call from God to leave Ur of the Chaldees and to go to the land of Canaan, to a land that God would show him. Little article here from Patriarchs and Prophets to further explain it. Patriarchs and Prophets, page 127. The call from heaven first came to Abraham while he dwelt in Ur of the Chaldees, and in obedience to it he removed to Haran. Thus far his father's family accompanied him, for with their idolatry they united the worship of the true God. So here we see that Terah, even though he worshipped God, he also had his idols as well. Here Abraham remained until the death of Terah, but from his father's grave the divine voice bade him go forward. His brother Nahor with his household clung to their home and their idols. Besides Sarah, the wife of Abraham, only Lot, the son of Haran, long since dead, chose to share the patriarch's pilgrim life. Yet it was a large company that set out from Mesopotamia. Abraham already possessed extensive flocks and herds. So here we see Lot leaving Ur of the Chaldees with his grandfather Terah and his uncles Nahor and Abraham. The family reaches Haran, where they resided until the grandfather Terah died. Nahor then decided to stay in Haran. But Abraham again received the call from God and leaves Haran, and with him goes a large crowd. Abraham and his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, his herdsmen, workers and servants, and a large group of people from Haran who joined him in the worship of the true God. You see, while Abraham was in Haran, he didn't just sit there. He preached and he won many converts to the true God. And they followed him from there to wherever he was going. They did not know where he was going, but they followed him because he was leading them to God. They first went to Shechem. Then they went to Bethel. And when famine hit the land, they moved to Egypt. Then their next move was back to Bethel, where they settled for a while. Turn to Genesis chapter 13, because this is the start of the crux of the story. Genesis chapter 13, verses 1 to 13. Genesis 13, verses 1 to 13. And Abram went up out of Egypt, he and his wife and all that he had, and Lot with them, into the south. And Abram was very rich in cattle, in silver and in gold. And he went on his journeys from the south even to Bethel, unto the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Hai, unto the place of the altar which he had made there at the first. And there Abraham called on the name of the Lord. And Lot also, which went with Abraham, had flocks and herds and tents. And the land was not able to bear them, that they might dwell together, for their substance was great, so that they could not dwell together. And there was strife between the herdsmen of Abram's cattle and herdsmen of Lot's cattle. And the Canaanites and the Perizzites dwelt then in the land. And Abram said unto Lot, Let there be no strife, I pray thee, between me and thee, and between my herdsmen and thy herdsmen, for we be brethren. Is not the whole land before thee? Separate thyself, I pray thee, from me. If thou wilt take the left hand, then I will go to the right. Or if thou depart to the right hand, then I will go to the left. And Lot lifted up his eyes and beheld all the plains of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere, before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, even as the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, as thou comest into Zoar. Then Lot chose him all the plain of Jordan, and Lot journeyed east, and they separated themselves the one from the other. Abram dwelt in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelt in the cities of the plain, and pitched his tent towards Sodom. But the men of Sodom were wicked, and sinners before the Lord exceedingly. Not long afterwards, the Bible doesn't mention the time, but there was a war in the land between the king of Elam and the 5 princes of Canaan. And in that war, Lot and his family were captured and taken away by the king of Elam. But we read that Abraham mustered an army and went and rescued Lot and his family and returned them back to their home in Sodom. There we find Lot then living in Sodom. Again, we don't know how long. We don't know how long he lived there from the time he was returned. But if we turn to chapter 19, Genesis chapter 19, And we find there the story of what happened to Sodom and Gomorrah. I was going to read chapter 19, but I think we all basically know the story of the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. But there are parts in there I'd like to pick out. God sent his angels to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. Lot was warned by the angels of the coming destruction. But even then, he had to be dragged out of the city just before destruction fell. And even then, he tried to bargain with the angels and wouldn't follow their directions of where they wanted him to go. Lot ended up losing all his possessions, everything he had, except for his 2 daughters. He lost his whole family. Lot began life in a city, and he ended it in an incestuous relationship with his daughters in a cave. Lot enjoyed great wealth, and yet he died in poverty. Where did Lot go wrong? What mistakes did Lot make? I believe it's the same mistakes that many of us do today. I know I did. What lessons can we learn from the story of Lot? We know that Lot lost his father at a young age. But was that an excuse? No. He wasn't left without strong role models. He had his grandfather and he had his uncle Abraham. But unfortunately, Lot didn't develop their senses of purpose. He didn't build his life upon their examples. Turn to Genesis chapter 13 and we'll read verses 8 to 13. And Abraham said unto Lot, Let there be no strife, I pray thee, between me and thee, and between my herdsmen and thy herdsmen, for we be brethren. Is not the whole land before thee? Separate thyself, I pray thee, from me. If thou wilt take the left hand, then I will go to the right. Or if thou depart to the right hand, then I will go to the left. I'm going to read a part here from Patriarchs and Prophets, chapter 12. Page 133. Although Lot owed his prosperity to his connection with Abraham, he manifested no gratitude to his benefactor. Courtesy would have dictated that he yield the choice to Abraham, but instead of this he selfishly endeavoured to grasp all its advantages. He lifted up his eyes and beheld all the plain of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere, even as the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt, as thou comest unto Zoar. The most fertile region in all Palestine was the Jordan Valley, reminding the beholders of the lost paradise and equalling the beauty and productiveness of the Nile-enriched plains that they had so lately left. There were cities also, wealthy and beautiful, inviting to profitable traffic in their crowded marts. Dazzled with visions of worldly gain, Lot overlooked the moral and spiritual evils that would be encountered there. The inhabitants of the plain were sinners before the Lord exceedingly, but of this he was ignorant, or knowingly gave it but little weight. He chose him all the plain of Jordan and pitched his tent towards Sodom. How little did he foresee the terrible results of this selfish choice. After the separation from Lot, Abraham again received the Lord's promise of a whole country. Soon after he removed to Hebron, pitching his tent under the oaks of Mamre and erecting beside it an altar to the Lord. In the free air of those upland plains, with their olive groves and vineyards, their fields of wavering grain, and the wide pasture grounds of the encircling hills, he dwelt, well content with his simple patriarchal life, and leaving to Lot the perilous luxury of the Vale of Sodom. Lot should have stayed with his uncle. That was his first mistake. He should have stayed with his uncle. Lot's initial peace and happiness came from his relationship with his uncle, but he failed to recognise it. When Abraham suggested that they part, he should have said, "No way, I'd rather lose all my possessions than lose you." Lot's choice of where to live was the deciding factor. From Adventist Home, chapter 19, page 131. In choosing a home, God would have us consider first of all the moral and the religious influences that will surround us and our families.
Amen.
We should not voluntarily expose ourselves to influences that are unfavourable to the formation of Christian character. Be not controlled by the desire for wealth, the dictates of fashion, or the customs of society. Consider what will tend most to simplicity, purity, health, and real worth. Instead of dwelling where only the works of men can be seen, where the sights and sounds frequently suggest thoughts of evil, where turmoil and confusion bring weariness and disquietude, go where you can look upon the works of God, find rest of spirit in the beauty and quietude and peace of nature. Also from Adventist Home, chapter 20, page 135. Life in the cities is false and artificial. The intense passion for money-getting, the whirl of excitement and pleasure-seeking, the thirst for display, the luxury and extravagance, all are forces that with great masses of mankind are turning the mind from life's true purpose. They are opening the door to 1,000 evils. Upon the youth, they have the most irresistible power. One of the most subtle and dangerous temptations that assails the children and youth in the cities is the love of pleasure. Holidays are numerous. Games and horse racing draw thousands, and the whirl of excitement and pleasure attracts them away from the sober duties of life. Money that should have been saved for better uses is frittered away on amusements. The cities are filled with temptation. The children and youth should be carefully guarded. They should be kept away from the hotbeds of iniquity that are to be found in our cities. In choosing a home, many parents think more of their worldly interests than of moral and social atmosphere, and the children form associations that are unfavourable to the development of piety and the formation of right characters. And even though she wrote that so long ago, I think we only have to look around today and we can see that all happening now.
Amen.
They expose their children to many and great temptations. The boys have no employment, and they obtain a street education and go on from one step in depravity to another, until they lose all interest in anything that is good and pure and holy. Don't we see that with our youth today? When Lot entered Sodom, he fully intended to keep himself free from iniquity and to command his household after him. But he signally failed. The corrupting influences about him had an effect upon his own faith, and his children's connection with the inhabitants of Sodom bound up his interest in measurement with theirs. In Testimonies, volume 7, page 89, we read, God would have none of us like Lot, who chose a home in a place where he and his family were brought into constant contact with evil. Lot went into Sodom rich, he left with nothing, led by an angel's hand. In Testimonies number 4, page 110, Lot chose Sodom for his home because he saw that there were advantages to be gained there from a worldly point of view. But after he had established himself and grown rich in earthly treasures, he was convinced that he had made a mistake in not taking into consideration the moral standing of the community in which he was to make his home. The dwellers in Sodom were corrupt. Vile conversation greeted his ears daily, and his righteous soul was vexed by the violence and crime he was powerless to prevent. His children were becoming like those wicked people, for association with them had perverted their morals. Taking all these things into consideration, the worldly riches he had gained seemed small and not worth the price he had paid for them. His family connections were extensive, his children having married among the Sodomites. Lot was a person just like you and I. He made mistakes just like we do. But he left lessons there for us to learn if only we're willing to take notice of them. The life of Lot also reveals to us the love, the patience and the forbearance of God towards mankind.
Amen.
Now I'd like you just to have a look at chapter 19, Genesis chapter 19, and we'll see just what Lot had to go through. Starting at verse 1. And there came 2 angels to Sodom at evening, and Lot sat in the gate of Sodom, and Lot, seeing them, rose up to meet them. And he bowed himself with his face towards the ground. And he said, Behold now, my lords, turn in, I pray you, into your servant's house, and tarry all night, and wash your feet. And ye shall rise up early, and go on your ways. And they said, Nay, but we will abide in the streets all night. And he pressed upon them greatly, and they turned in unto him, and entered into his house. And he made them a feast, and did bake unleavened bread, and they did eat. But before they lay down, the men of the city, even the men of Sodom, compassed the house around, both old and young, all the people from every quarter. And they called unto Lot and said unto him, Where are the men which came into thee this night? Bring them out unto us, that we may know them. And Lot went out the door unto them, and shut the door after him, and said, I pray you, brethren, do not so wickedly. Behold, now I have 2 daughters, which have not known man. Let me, I pray you, bring them out unto you, and do ye to them as is good in your eyes. Only unto these men do nothing, for therefore come they under the shadow of my roof. And they said, Stand back. And they said again, This one fellow came into sojourn, and he needs to be now a judge? Now will we deal worse with him than with them? And they pressed sore upon the man, even Lot, and came near to break the door. But the men put forth their hand and pulled Lot into the house to them, and shut the door. And they smote the men that were at the door of the house with blindness, both small and great, so that they wearied themselves to find the door. And the men said unto Lot, Hast thou here any besides son-in-law, and thy sons, and thy daughters, and whatever thou hast in the city? Bring them out of this place, for we will destroy this place, because the cry of them is waxen great before the face of the Lord. And the Lord has sent us to destroy it. And Lot went out and spoke unto his sons-in-law, which married his daughters, and said, Up, and get ye out of this place, for the Lord will destroy this city. But he seemed as one that mocked us. He seemed as one that mocked unto his sons-in-law. And when the morning arose, then the angels hastened Lot, saying, Arise, take thy wife and thy 2 daughters which are here, lest thou be consumed in the iniquity of the city. And while he lingered, the men laid hold upon his hand, and upon the hand of his wife, and upon the hand of his 2 daughters. The Lord being merciful unto him, and they brought him forth and set him without the city. And it came to pass when they had brought them forth abroad, that he said, Escape for thy life. Look not behind thee, neither stay thou in all the plain. Escape to the mountains, lest thou be consumed. Now you would think that would be enough warning there, and he'd seen that they were angels, he knew who they were. Wouldn't that be enough for you to do what they said? But no. Lot tries to bargain with them. And Lot said unto them, Oh, not so, my lord. Behold now, thy servant hath found grace in thy sight, and thou hast magnified thy mercy, which thou hast showed unto me in saving my life. And I cannot escape to the mountains, lest some evil take me and I die. Behold now, this city is near to flee unto. It is a little one. Oh, let me escape there. Is it not a little one? And my soul shall live. And he said unto him, See, I have accepted thee concerning this thing also, that I will not overthrow the city for which thou hast spoken. Haste now, escape thither, for I cannot do anything until thou come hither. Therefore the name of the city was called Zoar. The sun was risen upon the earth when Lot entered into Zoar. Then the Lord rained upon Sodom and Gomorrah brimstone and fire from the Lord out of heaven. And he overthrew those cities and all the plains and all the inhabitants of the city and that which grew upon the ground. But his wife looked back from behind him, and she became a pillar of salt. The life of Lot reveals to us the love, patience and forbearance of God towards mankind. For our last text, I want you to turn to 2 Peter chapter 2, verses 7 and 8. 2 Peter chapter 2, verses 7 and 8. And we read there, or verse 6, And turning the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah unto ashes, condemned them with an overthrow, making them an example unto those that afterwards should live ungodly. And delivered just Lot, vexed with the filthy conversation of the wicked. For that righteous man, dwelling amongst them, in seeing and hearing, vexed his righteous soul from day to day with their unlawful deeds. The Lord knoweth how to deliver the godly out of the temptations, and to reserve the unjust unto the day of judgment to be punished. In the New Living Translation it says, But God also rescued Lot out of Sodom, because he was a righteous man who was sick of the shame, immorality of the wicked people around him. Yes, Lot was a righteous man who was tormented in his soul by the wickedness he saw and heard day after day. All these happened because Lot chose the wrong place to live. What about us? Are we choosing the wrong place to live? What about our youth, our children? Ourselves. In closing, I want to share a little saying which I hope that you will think hard and long on. It's a very little saying. You've probably heard this one before. Where do you wish you and your family to spend eternity in? Smoking or non-smoking? Amen.